Welcome to today's explainer. We all love that universal comfort of something sweet, right? Whether it's just tossing a spoonful of sugar into your morning coffee, grabbing an ice-cold cola on a really hot afternoon, or finally unwrapping your favorite chocolate bar after a crazy long week. Sweetness is an absolute staple of everyday life. It brings us joy. But today, we're zooming in on the entirely hidden, highly structured system that actually brings that sweetness right to our tables. We're going to examine the stark, unseen human cost of sugar production. And I promise you, by the time we wrap up, you're never going to look at a simple sugar packet the exact same way again. Sugar is sweet, but some sweetness has a price so cruel, it hits the conscience, not the tongue. Okay, let's dive right into this stark contrast. This quote really hits the nail on the head for what we're looking at today. We've got an end product that is literally loved worldwide, but its origin story, it's remarkably dark. It's a pretty powerful reminder that global supply chains often completely bury the realities of the folks working at the very bottom. So, where exactly is this heavy price being paid?
Section 1. The unknown and cruel price of sugar.
To really understand this, we need to focus on the Beed district in Maharashtra, India. Every single year, thousands of migrant couples travel down there just for the sugarcane harvest. And the daily reality of this work, it's absolutely grueling. We are talking about shifts starting way before dawn and dragging on until long after the sun goes down. So that's 12 to 14 hours of intense, back-breaking physical labor every single day. And get this, it happens 7 days a week for 6 straight months. Literally half a year of unbroken, continuous labor. There's zero concept of sick leave, no holiday breaks at all. These workers are locked into an incredibly rigid, inescapable cycle. Now, you might be thinking, why not just take a day off if you're exhausted, right? Well, here is the financial trap. Missing just a single day of work doesn't just mean you lose that one day's pay. It actually triggers a massive penalty equal to an entire week's wages. So one single day off wipes out 7 whole days of grueling labor. It's this immense, crushing financial pressure that practically forces these couples to work through pain, exhaustion, you name it. They literally just cannot afford to stop.
Section 2. The cruel rules of sugarcane fields.
When you're dealing with rules this unbelievably strict, it inevitably clashes with basic human biology, and specifically menstruation. When a woman is menstruating, a little bit of physical rest isn't a luxury, it's a basic biological need, especially when your job involves swinging a heavy machete for 14 hours a day under a blazing sun. But as we just saw, the system simply doesn't allow for a break. Taking that much-needed rest triggers that massive financial penalty. It means a drastically lower income, rapidly increasing debt, and basically a completely ruined household budget. So these women are forced into an impossible bind. Acknowledging their own biology results in catastrophic financial loss for their whole family. Which leads us to this incredibly chilling reality. Faced with the unstoppable force of these harvest rules and the immovable object of human biology, a horrifying compromise was engineered. The quote goes, "A solution was found, not for the problem, but for the body." Just let that sink in. Instead of fixing a deeply broken, cruel labor system to accommodate actual human beings, the workers were pushed to permanently alter their own bodies just to fit the system. They ended up making the ultimate biological sacrifice. Section 3. The terrifying statistics of hysterectomies. To see exactly what that sacrifice looks like on paper, we don't even have to rely on rumors or hearsay. We can look straight at the data from the Maharashtra government's very own health survey. 843. In the year 2024, right before the sugarcane harvesting season even kicked off, 843 women in just this one single district underwent hysterectomies. I mean, just pause and think about the scale of that for a second. Hundreds of women simultaneously opting for a major life-altering surgery to remove an organ purely so they'd be physically capable of surviving a 6-month harvest without the quote-unquote liability of a menstrual cycle. And the breakdown of this data brilliantly and terribly illustrates the tragedy. Out of those 843 women, a staggering 477 of them were between the ages of just 30 and 35. We're talking about horrifyingly young women undergoing a major surgery that forcefully induces early menopause and brings a whole host of lifelong health issues. And they are doing it purely as a mechanism to stay employable in those fields. To put the sheer scale of this into perspective, the national average in India for hysterectomies among women aged 15 to 49 is around 3.2%. But if you look at the female sugarcane workers in the Beed district, that number skyrockets to 55.73%. Let that sink in.
That means more than 1 in 2 of these workers are entirely wombless, many of them by the time they hit 30. The massive leap from 3% to nearly 56% tells us that this absolutely is not some medical anomaly. It's essentially a systemic requirement of the job.
Section 4, Corporate Responsibility and Silent Exploitation. So you have to ask, if the human cost at the source is this extreme, who's actually buying the sugar? Well, investigative journalists traced the supply chain directly from these very fields straight to some massive global brands. We're talking Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Cadbury, and Unilever. But there is a really dark irony here. These huge corporations operate behind this pristine facade of ethical certificates, social responsibility promises, and paper-perfect audit reports. Their supply chain documents looked completely flawless on paper. Meanwhile, it was only the bodies of the actual women harvesting the sugar that were being systematically broken. What exactly happened when this massive contradiction was dragged into the light? Well, the responses were varied but largely superficial. Some companies simply cut ties with a specific supplier, just to protect their brand image. Others launched these sort of vague awareness programs. A few utilized legal loopholes to completely sidestep any direct accountability. And on the public side of things, the government stepped in by forming another committee, which notably is the second committee they formed for this exact same issue since 2019. But despite those canceled contracts, the PR-friendly awareness campaigns, and the brand's new government committees, here is the stark reality. The harvesting didn't stop. The sugar just keeps flowing seamlessly into the global market. And that deeply cruel process of adapting women's physical bodies to handle the relentless labor, it continues entirely uninterrupted in the fields. The systemic issue remains totally unresolved. This really brings us to a profound realization about how our modern world operates. When we picture exploitation, we tend to imagine old school stuff, right? Dark factory smoke, physical chains, visible coercion. But modern exploitation is way more refined than that. It is completely silent. The system doesn't even need to use physical force anymore. Hunger is enough. Debt is enough. Poverty is enough. That suffocating economic pressure pushes human beings into a corner where sacrificing a vital bodily organ basically becomes indistinguishable from a basic survival strategy. Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. The true cost of our everyday items is rarely the price printed on the barcode at the supermarket. When you stir that sugar into your tea, sip a cold cola, or unwrap a piece of chocolate, who is truly paying the final price? It's paid by someone else, far away, standing under a blazing sun in a distant sugarcane field, sacrificing her own body just to survive. It's a really heavy question, but understanding these connections is the first step to seeing the global supply chain as it truly is. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this leaves you with something important to think about the next time you reach for a sweet treat.